Welcome back to part 2 of our Neverland 5 video, where we are discussing the 5 former employees of Michael Jackson that betrayed and sold him out for money during the height of the 1993 allegation. In part 1, we gave a rundown of each employee and sort of giving some background information about them in terms of what they did for Michael and some of the things that they said. So now we're going to go into the actual lawsuit portion of this. And the best way to sort of break down all the different things that they did is to look at their appeal that they filed when they lost the lawsuit against Michael, because this really details every single thing they did. The gist of this is all 5 employees joined together to file one big joint lawsuit against Michael in December 1994, where they demanded $16 million, saying that they were harassed and emotionally disabled, yada, yada, yada. So now we're going to go into the actual reasons why some of these employees might have been terminated, and we'll start with Sheikhan. So there isn't an actual reason listed for him, but it probably has something to do with the fact that, as we said in part 1, he was stealing from Michael. So this is something that eventually ended up coming out in the countersuit, where Michael accused him of theft, and obviously he was able to prove it. We don't know exactly what it is that he stole exactly, but because of this theft, Sheikhan, which you can see in this article behind me, was ordered to pay Michael $25,000. Now, in part 1, we also mentioned that Adrian McManus was stealing from Michael as well, which is another thing that came out in the countersuit, because what she did was she took a drawing that Michael had done of Elvis Presley, and she sold it to the media for $1,000. The receipts of this were documented. They were able to find that. And so that was one incident of her stealing. But then there was another employee of Michael's, her name was Francine Orozco, where she testified that McManus had actually showed her, like she'd gone over to McManus's house, and McManus had showed her a room where she had a bunch of Michael's belongings. So she had been taking from Michael over the years. Additionally, Orozco also stated that McManus had tried to get her, Orozco, to say that she had witnessed another male employee of Michael's essaying her. So she was trying to get Orozco to lie for her in that way, which shows you a little bit more of her character. And if you think that's bad, McManus was also found to have defrauded, or stolen rather, more than $30,000 from her niece and nephew. It was some sort of savings or trust fund set up for them, and she took their money. So again, that shows you her character. And again, from this Billboard report behind me, you can also see where she was assessed more than $30,000 for taking that sketch that Michael had done of Elvis and selling it to the media for $1,000. So yeah, she was kind of stealing a lot. What's more about Bagnall is, according to one of Michael's other employees, Violet Sylvia, apparently Bagnall wanted $50,000 to say positive commentary about Michael. You can see this behind me, where Sylvia said that she made that request for $50K. So again, it's just very interesting how the people who have said they saw Michael do things have acted. As we mentioned in part 1, Michael countersued these 5 former employees, and he won. And so when he won, they were hit with a bunch of sanctions, discovery violations, plus they had to cover the attorney fees and yada, yada, yada. So altogether, this was like a $1.4 million judgment against them. And at least by the time of Michael's 2005 trial, they had not paid him. So they probably still owe him to this day, because I don't know if they've ever paid that money. As you can also see behind me, all 5 of these former employees were hit with sanctions because they failed to produce the documents and the correspondence in regards to them participating in a 1996 Star magazine issue in regards to Michael and Lisa Marie Presley. So this means that they were asked to produce their documents that they might have signed, any money they might have received, yada, 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 and they didn't produce everything. So this is what they were hit with sanctions for. As you keep going through the filing, you start to see these little reasons why these former employees would have had a vendetta against Michael. And a lot of them we actually have already talked about in part 1. But just to make a long story short, what these 5 employees are told by their lawyer is that in order to finance their lawsuit, they're going to have to find a way to come up with money. And the easiest way of coming up with that money was selling salacious stories about Michael Jackson to the tabloids. Now, if you go back to 1993, 1994, the most quote unquote salacious story you could sell about Michael were stories regarding the allegation. Either that or his marriage to Lisa Marie Presley once that was announced. And like we've already covered in part 1, Adrienne McManus admitted that she was making up these gossipy, untrue stories in regards to Michael and Lisa's relationship despite not knowing anything about it. As you continue going through the filing, it's revealed, and you can see this behind me as well, where basically every time they were asked about any kind of correspondence they had with the media or to produce any documents in terms of their correspondence with the media, their attorneys, and by their, I'm meaning the Neverland 5, their attorneys would constantly object and just not want them to answer any questions about what they might have done in terms of the media. They even went as far as to file a declaration under the penalty of perjury, where they stated that they had turned over everything, like there wasn't anything additional left in terms of their correspondence with the media. And so they were actually kind of lucky to not go to jail for this, because that's what perjury can kind of result in, going to jail. Even more interesting, the filing also revealed that all 5 of these former employees had been in contact with Victor Gutierrez. Now, for those that don't know who Victor Gutierrez is, this is really kind of a video within itself. But to make a long story short, he is a self-proclaimed journalist who just told a lot of lies about Michael, especially in regards to the allegations. He was actually sued by Michael, and Michael won a lawsuit against him for one particular disgusting lie. So that just kind of goes to show you the kind of person that he is, and how he really contributed to really just trying to bring Michael down. So very interesting to know for sure through this document that they were in contact with him. And since we're on the topic of Gutierrez, it eventually ended up coming out, or Gutierrez ended up admitting rather, that he had paid 4 of the 5 Neverland 5 members $200. So this is money that he had given them out of his own pocket. Remember, they were meeting with him privately. So that's very, very interesting. But what's even more interesting is the fact that apparently Gutierrez was subpoenaed by the court to come in and talk about his role in all of this, and he did not show up. So for those that don't know, when you get subpoenaed and you do not show up to court, that leads to an arrest warrant. And so a warrant was issued for Gutierrez because he did not show up. It's not really explained what happened to him afterwards, if he had to turn himself in or if he was able to work something out with the court. We don't really know that. But again, Gutierrez was supposed to come to court and talk about all of this, and he did not. He broke the law. As we stated earlier, the Neverland 5 lost their case against Michael, and the best statement that sums up this entire court case as a whole is the one that came directly from the judge, where he said, "I've heard enough. I'm going to tell you now, this is clearly obstructionist. I don't even want to hear argument. I'm going to impose sanctions on you." So yeah, that kind of tells you how everything went down. Unfortunately, there are plenty more stories when it comes to these types of lies and liars and Michael Jackson. We will definitely be detailing more of these stories in the future, but in the meantime, thanks for tuning in, and remember, facts don't lie, but people do.